They called it Black Monday. It was the day the Supreme Court issued its famous ruling in Brown v. Board of Education, a ruling that told Americans school segregation was unconstitutional. And for a group of white Mississippians, that day came to be known as Black Monday. The moniker came from this man, Thomas Pickens Brady, a prominent segregationist and future Mississippi Supreme Court justice who gave a defiant speech against the Brown decision titled Black Monday. It was printed as a booklet and passed out to white school children in Mississippi. Seeped in racism and white supremacist thinking, you might not be surprised to hear that it was published by the white supremacist organization, the Citizens Council, a group that was also formed in Mississippi right after, take a guess, the Brown v. Board ruling. I'm telling you all this to show you how deeply rooted the racism in Mississippi goes, how vicious the backlash was to federally mandated integration of black and white people. Because all of this relates directly to what's happening in Mississippi today in terms of the floods, the water crisis, and tens of thousands of Americans unable to even drink water out of their own taps. So stay with me. Because going back, even though Brown ruled that segregation in schools was unconstitutional, it didn't actually end segregation in Mississippi and other southern states. The backlash we just told you about turned into a strong white resistance movement, and supremacist organizations like the Citizens Council pushed back on any kind of integration.
I am Alabama State Senator Sam Inglehart, also Executive Secretary of the Citizens Council of Alabama. We are dedicated to the preservation of segregation by peaceful and legal means.
You heard him. As the Jackson Free Press notes, the Citizens Council fought integration through economic boycotts and intimidation of black and white people who might go along with it, and eventually boasted more than 80,000 members in chapters across the South. The white population was so successful in maintaining segregation through dual school systems for black and white students that 15 years later, in 1969, the Supreme Court had to issue another ruling on school segregation. Alexander v. Holmes. It told southern states that were resistant to integration that they had to integrate right now.
In October, the Supreme Court ordered immediate integration of certain school districts in Mississippi. The decision was later broadened to include school districts in 3 other southern states. This year, these children are scheduled to attend an integrated school.
But that didn't happen. Rather than integrate, white families left the public school system there. And all white Mississippi state officials passed laws that allowed public funds, taxpayer dollars, to be taken from public schools and allocated to all white private schools. That's white flight. Jackson, the capital city of Mississippi, became predominantly black. In fact, it's now 82% black, the blackest big city in America, and it has a diminishing local revenue from many of the low-income residents left behind. As one black Jackson resident told NBC News back in 2006, a lot of the economic base was leaving, our tax dollars were leaving, so by the time people that looked like us took over the administration of these public schools, they're administrating a bankrupt system. But it wasn't just the school system that was affected by white flight and the loss of a tax base. Every aspect of the city's infrastructure was affected. Which brings us back to today. The city's water system is particularly plagued after years of neglect and underinvestment. Donna Ladd, investigative journalist and the founding editor of the Mississippi Free Press in Jackson, she wrote last year, quote, "Many of the same prominent whites who proudly attended well-funded public schools in Jackson before integration used the state legislature to control how much Jackson can tax our own citizens in order to pay for our own needs. They won't support desperately needed flood mitigation for the city unless it provides rich white people with valuable waterfront development." Flood mitigation. When Donna Ladd wrote that piece in March of 2021, heavy storms in Jackson, Mississippi had led to a water crisis where residents had no water to flush their toilets, and not a single home in the city had access to safe drinking water. And just this past weekend, heavy rainfall and river flooding overwhelmed the water system infrastructure in the city again, contaminating the water and leading to yet another major water crisis. Listen to the state's right-wing Republican governor, Tate Reeves.
Until it is fixed, it means we do not have reliable running water at scale. It means the city cannot produce enough water to fight fires, to reliably flush toilets, and to meet other critical needs. Please stay safe. Do not drink the water.
Do not drink the water, says the governor of a state in a country that is the richest in human history. But look, in a place like Mississippi, this is a problem that goes back decades. It's an issue facing a city of more than 150,000 people, and one the current mayor of Jackson is intimately familiar with.
I've been saying that it's not a matter of if our system would fail, but when our system would fail. I can remember as far back as 1988 when my family moved to Jackson and the problems that we had with our water system at that time. And so it's been an underinvestment into this system. And I think that there's a little bit to be shared across the board through leadership on every level.
Last year, we told you about the water disaster in Benton Harbor, Michigan, where centuries-old lead pipes and crumbling infrastructure poisoned the water. Almost half the people in Benton Harbor live in poverty, and over 80% of residents are black. You've likely heard of the Flint water crisis as well, a city that's also majority black and brown. It isn't a coincidence that each of these cities are predominantly black and brown. It isn't a coincidence that they have histories of racial and economic inequality. When Joe Biden issued an executive order in his first weeks in office on environmental justice, talking about the relationship between structural racism and environmental hazards, this is the kind of thing he was referring to. This is what he meant. In fact, Jackson right now is what American structural racism looks like. We've said it before on this show. In America, almost all roads lead back to race. Even the fact that this morning, tens of thousands of our fellow Americans, mostly black Americans, didn't have clean water to even brush their teeth. Joining me now to talk more about all of this is Jarvis Dortch. Based in Jackson, he's the executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Mississippi. He's also a former Mississippi state representative. Jarvis, thanks so much for coming on the show. Let me start by asking, you're based in Jackson. What has life been like in the last week for you, for your family and friends? Are you having to use only bottled or boiled water?
Yeah, I mean, and thank you again for reaching out and then go share our story. Prior to this past weekend and everything that's gone on with the floods and how it impacted the water system, the city was under a boil water alert. So we've been having to boil water in Jackson for about 30 days. So, and that's something that pops up usually at least once a month, that it's a prolonged boil water alert that citizens are faced with, businesses are faced with. So that's been ongoing. Different parts of the city are impacted more than others. There's water pressure in different areas of the city. I think most parts of the city have some type of water at least some part of the day. From what we're hearing, there is more of an issue in South Jackson and West Jackson, where the water has literally the furthest to travel, and that's where the water pressure is the lowest. But things have improved since Monday. But again, this is a long-term issue that's not going to be fixed overnight.
And it's a long-term issue, so I have to ask, what are state legislators doing? I know you used to be one. The Republicans who work in Jackson, for example, it's the state capital. Are they also experiencing this? I find it shocking that we're not talking about some distant, small, rural town, but the capital of an American state.
Well, the state legislature in Mississippi has done a great job at ignoring problems. That's something they do well. We've had issues with our TANF program, where we had a governor literally, use it as a slush fund to give money that's supposed to be helping those in need to developers and football players. We've had hospitals that have closed, and the legislature doesn't have hearings on Medicaid expansion. We got, $2 billion in federal funding, ARPA funding, 18 months ago, and that money has still not been spent. There's no real plan for any of that, because our legislature has traditionally not taken these hard issues seriously and has used their ability as lawmakers to help those that don't need help, to help those communities that have sprouted up outside of Jackson, like Flowood, where the governor lives at, where he directed $25 million to do infrastructure projects while he was lieutenant governor. And we're talking about an affluent neighborhood, small town with 8,000 people in it right outside of Jackson. But that's how money is directed in our state government, and the needs of individuals that live in cities like Jackson and also cities in the Mississippi Delta are ignored because that's not where the political power is at, and that's not where the thought or any interest in our legislature as far as taking care of those people.
So Politico is reporting Thursday, quote, the situation has been compounded by apparent tensions between the Mayor Lumumba, a black Democrat, and the Mississippi state government headed by a white Republican Governor Tate Reeves. Quote, each has held separate news conferences throughout the crisis. How much does race and racism contribute to Mississippi's seemingly dysfunctional politics? I mean, as you say, you were in the state legislature for 4 years. How much does racial division explain the politics, this crisis in Mississippi, in Jackson specifically?
I think and you did a great job of going back into the history and looking at how long this has taken to come. But I remember hearing from a former governor, William Winter, who was one of the most progressive governors Mississippi had in the 80s. He was also a legislator in the 40s. And he talked about anytime they try to do any major investments in the state as far as infrastructure, education, healthcare, they will be working together to get something done. And we're talking about an all-white male body. But sooner or later, someone will come in and say, well, that's going to benefit Black folks. So the legislature has just had that tradition of not doing that long-term investment. And that is carried over even to this day, where it's not as blatant with the racism, but you do get when you're a legislator or you're someone advocating for people in Jackson, you almost feel like you're advocating for an area that's not in the state. The way some of the state leaders and some of the other legislators look at the city, it's not that that Jackson is a part of Mississippi. Jackson to them is a problem that you guys should figure out. And if we help y'all, we're going to have to control how we help you all.